Everybody, video here for you today. Now I'm working on a few longer ones, but let's just talk about a news report that came out not too long ago about this part of the world. Just makes you question what we have learned about early migration in the Americas. Let's go over to that news report right here. This is The Conversation, and I will leave the link below. This news report came out yesterday. It says archaeologists determined the step-by-step path taken by the first people to settle the Caribbean islands. Certainly a very beautiful part of the world. It says, what route did the first settlers to colonize the islands of the Caribbean take? It says for millions of people around the world who live on islands today, a plane or boat can easily enough carry them to the mainland or other islands. But how did people in the ancient past first make it to distant islands they couldn't even see from home? Many islands from around the world can be reached only by traveling hundreds or even thousands of miles across open water. Yet nearly all the islands that people live on were settled by between 800 to 1,000 years ago. Just goes on here, despite more than a century of research, there are still many questions about the origin of the first Caribbean people, when they migrated and what routes they took. My colleagues and I recently reanalyzed archaeological data collected over 60 years to answer these fundamental questions. Settling the islands one by one based on the discovery of unique stone tools and food remains such as shells and bones, archaeologists have a general understanding that the first people spread throughout the Caribbean in a series of migrations that probably began at least 7,000 years ago and likely originated from northern South America. This was a very comprehensive study. They did 2,500 radiocarbon dating tests on 50 different islands. And when you do that thorough research, some patterns start to develop, and some things that you just assume are true maybe are proved to be wrong. It says here, determining where people lived first. By statistically analyzing remaining dates, we confirm that Trinidad was the first Caribbean island to be settled by humans at least minimum 7,000 years ago. So they're saying minimum based on their research, and who knows how far down they dug for evidence of human civilization. It says, however, Trinidad is so close to South America that only simple or even no boats were needed to get there. After Trinidad, the oldest settlements occurred between 6,000 and 5,000 years ago in the northern Caribbean on the large islands of the Greater Antilles, Cuba, Puerto Rico, and Hispaniola. Here is Trinidad down here. Who knows if this was connected back 7,000 years ago? But here, this was the first island settled. We are taught that people came down from the land bridge down here, came to North America, and then eventually went down to South America. But these islands were settled in a pattern starting down here. If that story is true about the land bridge and the migration, is that the first island that would have been settled off South America? Or would it have been right in this area here? Here's that map. Here is Trinidad down in the bottom right. And it seems ocean currents initially took people up to some islands up in this area. But here are some other pathways of migration. Seems like people came up from South America and then spread northward. I don't think the history that we are taught about that time period of migration fits. I've talked a lot about this. Seems there is new evidence that totally contradicts what we have been taught in the past. A lot of this history from the Younger Dryas period is beginning to be questioned and questioned seriously. Here's a video I made about 10 months ago. Clovis wiped out the megafauna, debunking history, the story that people just came down, migrated this way, and wiped out every single species of megafauna is just a ludicrous story coming from our past. There's a much deeper history coming with this time period. It's time we looked at what really happened here. At the end of the Younger Dryas period, this whole area, this whole continent got reset. We lost many species of large mammals that have been around for even a million years or so. What exactly happened? I think we are just starting to put this story together. But the migration of people, what we are taught, did it happen the way historians say it did? Is there a much deeper, more complicated story? Well, I think it's the latter. What about the Clovis people? We have sites from all across the United States here, at least 13,000 years ago. So when did that migration actually take place? Seems a lot of the stories we get from historians are a bunch of doo-doo. Human history goes a lot farther back here. And then at the Younger Dryas period, it seems like human population took a hit. There was a big decrease in the human population all across here. What exactly happened? Well, I think we're getting to the bottom of it, thanks to people like Randall Carlson and others. Also, is there hints from ancient texts saying that their civilization started long before what we are taught? Well, in Egypt, I've talked about it, maybe starting as long as 11,000 years ago. Is there hints from the Mayans that people came to this area of the world, right in this area, about 11,000 years ago, based on one of their longer counts, based on astronomical sightings? Well, might have a video on that coming up. I think we are learning a lot of answers based on new research here. You notice the dating chart goes back at least 8,500 years here. So when did people actually settle here? They kind of started migrating 7,000 years ago. So they must have known about these islands a lot prior to that. So we are just beginning to put together the pieces of this time period, starting with the Younger Dryas period when human history was reset here. I just thought this was interesting. People started migrating 8,000 years ago from this part of South America. And is the story on human migration really accurate from what we are taught? Human history is being decoded by what is under our feet. Here is just one area of the Caribbean or Caribbean. I'm not sure which is appropriate, if they both are. But this is a very interesting story. More answers being found every day. The story of boat travel in ancient times. It's a very underrated subject. But humans didn't look at the oceans as obstacles. They looked at them as highways to migrate to new places, and way back in human history, that is for sure. There's a whole lot we don't know about when these places were settled, how people first came here, when that was, how far back in time does that go. Just an interesting subject, interesting report from this area of the world. Hope you thought that was interesting. You all have. Very nice.